After months of qualifiers that qualify you for qualifiers that qualify for one big qualifier, the dust is settled and we finally know who's going to be representing North America and Europe in Reykjavik, Iceland at Valorant esports' first ever LAN, Masters 2. Let me walk you through who that is, who that isn't, and how we got here, and set the stage for what is maybe the single esport event I am most excited for in my entire life. Alright guys, if you like Valorant, if you are stoked to see some competitive Breeze play, if you can't wait for Iceland, I need you to do something for me. I need you to subscribe to the channel, scroll down, like the video, and let us know that you want more Valorant content just like this in the future. Alright, so let's start with this weekend, where Valorant Season 2 finals took place for North America, Europe, Japan, Korea, and the SEA region. We locked in 7 of the 10 teams that will be competing in the game's first ever LAN on May 24th. That's just like 3 weeks from now. Let's start in North America, where the closest thing to consistency you can even expect in the early days of an esport, Sentinels were able to plow their way through the upper bracket and get their spot at Iceland.
Hold my route.
One Raptor.
He swung out Raptor.
One more backside. All right.
Wait.
He's CT,
Spawn. I tagged him early. He can be sight.
Hit him to 80.
Around the corner, and Zeta needs to hang on. A 1v1 Zomb's full HP.
Close left.
Hit him 80.
Go, boys. We made it.
I think after this weekend, it's safe to call it, at least for now. Sens and Tens have cemented themselves as the best team in North America. And that's really saying something, because if you've watched as much NA Valorant as I have, at times it felt like the best team fluctuated like every 4 days. So congrats to Sentinels, but I think it's safe to say that them qualifying wasn't the most surprising thing to come out of North America this weekend. It's who else qualified, and who didn't qualify. To tell that story, let's go back in time a little bit to last Wednesday, on the eve of the NA finals. Heading into the weekend, the favorites to represent NA, in addition to Sentinels, I would say were 100 Thieves and Envy, simply due to their consistency during the Masters 1 season, and the fact that these rosters are filled with OG Counter-Strike players. They know how to play when the pressure's on. Now, as many of you probably already know, when the dust settled and it came time for the winners and losers bracket finals on Saturday, neither of those teams were in the running to get their spot on LAN. Instead, it came down to Sentinels, Cloud9, and Version 1. In the upper finals, Sentinels had to defeat Cloud9, which was particularly poetic because Tens had to defeat the team that, well, sort of owns him after Cloud9 has been a non-factor for like weeks.
But Tens and company holding on, but the response from Cloud9 has been swift as well. But it's gonna go all the way for the ace. You have to be kidding me.
That sent C9 down to the lower bracket, where they had to compete for the second and final slot in Iceland against an upstart team called Version 1. V1 have been kind of popping off a little bit in recent weeks, and they're spearheaded by ex-Chaos esports Counter-Strike player and their IGL, Vanity, along with Zelsis, who honestly popped off on Phoenix and Raze like all weekend. And in the end, it was actually Version 1 who came out on top, defeating Leaf and company on Cloud9, which, if I'm being honest, warms my heart. It's been less than 6 months since Chaos Esports Counter-Strike was forced to break up, and Vanity told us on this literal show he was being forced to move to Valorant because he couldn't find an org in NA.
I mean, we knew back in like October, I think we were getting released, and honestly I kind of like expected it like throughout the year because we were getting like delayed payments and stuff. We never had sponsors, so it was kind of just like investor money and stuff, and that's never gonna last like super long, right? So I mean, kind of sucks, but it is what it is. It wasn't super unexpected given like the circumstances around the year. Like there was just a bunch of like foreshadowing regarding it all, and I mean it sucks, but it's not the end of the world.
Sometimes the good guys do win.
Nice! Let's f***ing go!
Nice! Nice! Let's f***ing go! Let's f***ing go! You guys are f***ing animals! Okay, now let's talk about Europe, because for my money, I was actually more shocked by the results there than I was in NA. Fnatic and Team Liquid will be heading to Iceland representing the region, which doesn't sound that shocking, right? This is the biggest tournament in Valorant esports so far. So obviously we have 2 legacy esports orgs representing Europe. But the reality is, in Europe, the big time esports orgs have not had that much success in Valorant, at least until this weekend. Fnatic and Liquid didn't even make it as far as the Masters 1 tournament in Europe, let alone compete for the title. With that said, I am very impressed at Team Liquid's win this past weekend. They look like a well-oiled machine throughout the event, and in traditional European style, they gave us some unique looks as far as team compositions and how they approach these maps.
Who's going to Iceland? Who's going to Iceland? Who's going to Iceland?
They only played Sova on 2 out of the 5 maps in the finals, and they favored Brimstone over Omen and Astra on Smoke. Their most notable standouts were obviously Scream, who was the finals MVP, and Yompi, whose transition from CS to Valorant is clearly going pretty well.
When it comes to these after-plant scenarios, it can be tough to hold on a no-scope from Yuppie. Listening for both! The Finn is just going flashy at this stage, and
If you don't know, Yompi was a standout young talent in Counter-Strike, but due to a lingering VAC ban from when he was barely a teenager, he hasn't really been able to carve out a name for himself, which led to him literally suing Valve over the VAC ban. To take that one step further, the consequences of that VAC ban have actually recently changed, and due to some Valve-sanctioned miracle, if Yompi ever did return to Counter-Strike, he would be allowed to play in majors again.
Valve has made it so that VAC bans are temporary. Well, certain ones, not all of them. But still, it's something. After years of begging and pleading, the Iron Curtain has been lifted, with Valve finally showing some modicum of mercy when it comes to rehabilitating cheaters.
So, if you're a Team Liquid Valorant fan, you could say that this win this past weekend was pretty well timed. As for Scream, well, you know we're still talking about his one-taps.
Counter rather of popping down the old pushing mid to catch them on the way and Scream. Oh my god, man! Headshot after headshot. 4 kills on the board and Oxygen. It's the last round of the half. They thought they had it. They dealt with Yampi, and so that was surely the round going their way. And Scream comes through to ruin their day. Toronto's even naded himself, and Scream aces it out. A headshot wallbang.
After North America and Europe, rounding out the 7 teams qualified for Masters are Neutron Gaming from Korea, Crazy Raccoons from Japan, and X10 Gaming representing the SEA region. There are 3 slots remaining to round out the 10, and those will be filled by the end of the week by 2 teams from Brazil and 1 more team representing the Latin America region. Alright, so now that we've gotten all the insane action from the weekend out of the way, there are 2 big talking points from the world of Valorant right now that I want to go over before I leave you. The first is the inhuman fragging machine himself, TenZ. Now, understandably, there was a lot of joking going on Twitter when Cloud9 got their spot in the upper bracket finals against Sentinels. Not only was it funny that arguably the best player in North America was facing off against the team that was loaning him to his current team for a spot at the game's first ever LAN, it brought up an interesting question. If Cloud9 and Sentinels both made it to Iceland, what team would TenZ play for? Up until this weekend, we knew that Cloud9 was loaning TenZ to Sentinels to play in place of Sinatra for the remainder of this Challenger season, which theoretically ended this weekend. But over the course of the weekend, Cloud9's owner, Jack Etienne, actually confirmed on Reddit that there was already an agreement in place for TenZ to remain with Sentinels through Iceland. Which means that although we don't know how long for, it does appear like TenZ's relationship with Sentinels has either been extended or is actually longer than what was originally reported. This dude continued his absolutely godlike performances this past weekend, and I, for one, cannot wait to see if he can prove himself on LAN like he never did in Counter-Strike. Iceland could be TenZ's tournament.
Well,
It's Marshall and it's tens. So you don't count it out. Oh my gosh, you don't count it out. He's looking for more. He gets the other one as well.
The last thing I want to talk about today is perhaps the most important thing going on in Pro Valorant that wasn't these tournaments this last weekend. And that's Breeze.
Discover something new. A natural place full of blinding beauty.
Now, new maps are always exciting in a new game like this. Everyone likes new toys, but specifically, I wanted to talk about Breeze today because I think it is a welcome addition to the competitive environment for the game. Specifically, it was supposed to be added to the pro map pool at Masters 2 in Iceland, and I was stoked to finally watch pro players play this brand new map. But on May 4th, Riot Games actually announced that they were taking Breeze out of the competitive map pool for Iceland. They said that it's just not fair to ask these teams to prepare a brand new map in such a short amount of time. And I, for one, am stoked because this map is thick. Like, in a way that none of the other Valorant maps are. It's huge. There's a ton of angles to hold and little intricacies to learn. But I think it presents an answer to a problem that a lot of the Valorant maps have. You see, there's obviously been a lot of talk, even on this show, about how much lower the skill ceiling on the rifles are in Valorant versus Counter-Strike. And personally, I think that's mostly fine, but it becomes a lot less fine when most of your rifling experience is holding left click and spraying around corners in these tight angles on these tiny maps like Split. I think Breeze will be a welcome challenge for these pro teams to take long-range fights, to fight for mid control, and to be a little bit more careful with their utility. Because the fact is, you can't just smoke off an entire f***ing site on this map. They're too big. And I think that's a good thing. That said, if you don't want to take my word for it, just ask the GOAT himself, Shroud.
I've been playing it a lot, man. I'm gonna be real honest with you. A lot of people don't seem to like the map, but I think it's pretty sick.
Yeah, I think all the top players are gonna love it, and everyone else is gonna hate it. And it's a little.
You can like aim duel everywhere.
Yeah, it's a little worrisome because I think it's the best map they ever made. So if it gets bad feedback, then they might not ever make a map like it again. So I want to. Yeah, I think that's true. I think this is the direction that they need to go with their maps in the future.
Now, before Riot Games removed Breeze from Iceland, they announced that they were also adding a map veto for pro play when Breeze does go into the rotation. So my assumption, although I don't know for sure, is that that map veto will not happen in Iceland, but when they do finally put Breeze into the competitive rotation, we'll finally get a map veto. And that's everything. 7 out of 10 teams locked in for Valorant's first ever land. That is, again, just 3 weeks away. It looks like Tens will be completing with Sentinel, so we got an answer to that question. And we've got Breeze to look forward to. All we can ask for now is that this whole Viper and Astra purple and green cloud meta isn't as bad at the biggest event in the game's history as it is in my ranked games. Dimitri Pascaluta, the Valorant hater himself, he's going to play Jet because the thing about Dimitri is if you put him on Jet and you give him an op, some of his like weird like boomer Counter-Strike tinglings go off, you know, and he like stops complaining and starts playing. And then we got Niall McCrossman, who's a writer here. That's definitely the best Valorant player at theScore. He'll put him on Killjoy because he plays Killjoy in rank. I'm gonna have to play something like team focused because I'm not that good, but I know I like the game and I play it a lot. So I play like Sky, Sean Tepper. He can play maybe some Brimstone. We're just gonna have to rotate absolutely annihilating sites because you can't default when Devin's around. If you try to default your position when Devin's around, he'll be in the other team's spawn dying, like before you guys are done buying guns.